Okay, 34.3 is the reproductive system. So an individual can lead a healthy life without reproducing, but there isn't any other system that is more important for the continuation of the species. So without the reproductive system, no species could produce the next generation and the species would come to an end. So in a certain sense, this may be the most important system in the body. So what effects do estrogen and testosterone have on females and males? Well, in girls, the effect of sex hormones include breast development and a widening of the hips. In boys, they result in the growth of facial hair, increased muscular development, and deepening of the voice. So during the 7th week of development, male and female embryos start to develop differently. The male pattern of development is triggered by the production of testosterone in the embryo's gonads. In the female embryos, testosterone is absent and the female reproductive system develops under the influence of estrogen produced in the gonads. So estrogen and testosterone are steroid hormones primarily produced in the gonads. In addition to shaping the sexual development of the embryo, these hormones act on cells and tissues to produce many of the physical characteristics that are associated with males and females. So puberty is a period of rapid growth and sexual maturation during which reproductive systems become fully functional. So puberty actually begins in the brain when the hypothalamus signals the pituitary to produce the hormones that affect the gonads, the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone. So what are the main functions of the male reproductive system? Well, when puberty is complete, the reproductive system is fully functional, meaning that the male can produce and release active sperm. The release of LH stimulates cells in the testes to produce increased amounts of testosterone. Testosterone causes the physical changes in males associated with puberty, such as facial hair, increased muscular development, and a deepened voice. Testosterone and FSH stimulate the development of sperm. So when puberty is complete, the reproductive system is fully functional. The male can produce and release active sperm. This figure, there's a figure in your book that shows the structures of the male reproductive system. You can look at that on your own. Just before birth or after the testes, the primary male reproductive organs descend from the abdomen into an external sac called the scrotum. The temperature in the scrotum is a few degrees lower than the normal temperature of the body. The lower temperature is important for sperm development. So within each testes are clusters of hundreds of tiny tubules called semiferous tubules where sperm develop. Specialized diploid cells within the tubules undergo meiosis and form the haploid nuclei of the mature sperm. After they are produced in the tubules, the sperm are moved into the epididymis, in which they mature and are stored. So from the epididymis, some sperm are moved into a tube called the vas deferens. The vas deferens extends upward from the scrotum into the abdominal cavity and eventually merges with the urethra, the tube that leads to the outside of the body through the penis. And the glands lining the reproductive tract, including the seminal vesicles, the prostate, and the bulbourethral glands, produce a nutrient-rich fluid called seminal fluid. This nourishes the sperm and protects them from the acidity of the female reproductive tract. So the combination of sperm and seminal fluid is known as semen. Between 50 million and 130 million sperm are present in 1 milliliter of semen. That's about 2.5 million sperm per drop. So when the male is sexually aroused, the autonomic nervous system prepares the male organs to deliver sperm. The penis becomes erect and the sperm are ejected from the penis by contractions of smooth muscles lining the glands in the reproductive tract. This process is called ejaculation, and about 2 to 6 millimeters of semen are released in an average ejaculation. So the sperm structure consists of a head, which contains a highly condensed nucleus, a midpiece, which is packed with energy releasing mitochondria, and a tail or flagellum, which propels the cell forward. At the tip of the head is a small cap containing enzymes that are vital to fertilization. So, what are the main functions of the female reproductive system? Well, the main function of the female reproductive system is to produce egg cells, or ova or ovum, which is singular. In addition, the system prepares the female's body to nourish a developing embryo. It's thundering. The primary reproductive organs of the female are the ovaries. So in puberty, puberty in females starts when the hypothalamus signals the pituitary gland to release the FSH and the LH, and remember FSH is follicle stimulating hormone, stimulates cells within the ovaries to produce increased amounts of estrogens to start producing egg cells. So at puberty, each ovary contains up to 400,000 primary follicles. The follicles help an egg mature for release into the reproductive tract, and about 400 eggs are released in a woman's lifetime. There's a figure in your book that you can look at that will lay out the entire reproductive system for you there. One ovary usually produces and releases one mature ovum every 28 days or so. The process of egg formation and release occurs as part of the menstrual cycle, a regular sequence of events involving the ovaries, the lining of the uterus, and the endocrine system. The menstrual cycle is regulated by hormones made by the hypothalamus, the pituitary glands, and the ovaries, and it's controlled by internal feedback mechanisms. So during the menstrual cycle, an egg develops within a follicle and is released from an ovary. In addition, the uterus is prepared to receive a fertilized egg. If an egg is not fertilized, it is discharged along with the lining of the uterus. And if an egg is fertilized, embryonic development begins and the menstrual cycle ceases. The menstrual cycle includes the follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, and menstruation. The follicular phase. On day 1 of a menstrual cycle, the blood estrogen levels are low. The hypothalamus secretes a releasing hormone that stimulates the anterior pituitary to release the FSH and the LH. These two hormones travel to the ovaries where they cause a follicle to mature. There's another really good picture of that in your book. As the follicle develops, the cells surrounding the egg enlarge and begin to produce increased amounts of estrogen. The estrogen levels in the blood rises dramatically. Hang on, I got to move my book up here. Okay, high blood estrogen levels cause the hypothalamus to produce less releasing hormone, and the pituitary releases less LH and FSH. Estrogens also cause the lining of the uterus to thicken in preparation for receiving a fertilized egg. The development of an egg during this phase takes about 10 days. As the follicle grows, it releases more and more estrogens. When the concentrations of these hormones reach a certain level, the hypothalamus reacts by triggering a burst of LH and FSH from the anterior pituitary. The sudden increase in these hormones releases the follicle to rupture, releasing in ovulation the release of an egg from the ovary into one of the fallopian tubes. The egg is drawn into the fallopian tube. Microscopic cilia, the little hair-like projections, push the cell towards the uterus. Next is the luteal phase. As the egg moves through the fallopian tube, the ruptured follicle turns yellow, now known as the corpus luteum, which means yellow body in Latin. The corpus luteum continues to release estrogen, and it begins to release progesterone, which stimulates the growth and development of the blood supply in the surrounding tissue in the uterine lining. The rise of these hormones inhibits the production of FSH and LH. This is preventing the development of additional follicles during this cycle. And unless fertilization occurs and embryo starts to develop, the fall of the LH level leads to the degeneration of the corpus luteum. Estrogen levels fall. The hypothalamus signals the release of SSH and LH from the anterior pituitary, and the follicular phase begins all over again. So menstruation at the start of the new follicular phase, low estrogen levels cause the lining of the uterus to detach from the uterine wall. This tissue, along with blood and the unfertilized egg, are discharged through the vagina during a phase called menstruation. This cycle continues on average until the female is in her late 40s to early 50s, at which point the production of estrogen declines and the ovulation and menstruation stops. The permanent stopping of the menstrual cycle is called menopause. Now, pregnancy is the menstrual cycle ceases if a woman becomes pregnant. And during the first 2 days of the luteal phase, immediately following ovulation, the chances that an egg will be fertilized are the greatest. And this is usually 10 to 14 days after the completion of the last menstrual cycle. So if a sperm fertilizes an egg, the fertilized egg completes meiosis and immediately undergoes mitosis. After several divisions, a ball of cells will form and implant itself into the lining of the uterus. The uterus and embryo begin to release hormones that keeps the corpus luteum functioning for several weeks. This prevents the menstrual cycle from starting again. Okay, so what are some of the most commonly reported sexually transmitted diseases? Chlamydia is not only the most common bacterial STD, it's the most commonly reported bacterial disease in the United States. Viral STDs include hepatitis B, genital herpes, genital warts, and AIDS. Sexual diseases are spread by sexual contact are known as sexually transmitted disease. That's where we get the STDs. I'm sure you all know that. A 2008 study by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention showed that 1 in 4 females aged 14 to 19 were infected with a STD. Chlamydia is the most common bacterial STD, and it's the most commonly reported bacterial disease in the United States. It damages the reproductive tract, and it can lead to infertility. Viral STDs, including hepatitis B, genital herpes, genital warts, and AIDS, include those. Unlike the bacterial STDs, viral infections cannot be treated with antibiotics. So some viral STDs, such as AIDS, can be fatal. And several strains of the virus can cause genital warts, HPV, human papillomavirus, and these are major causes of cervical cancer in women. So recently, though, there has been a development to get a vaccination to prevent the HPV infection. Okay, STDs can be avoided. The safest course to follow to abstain from sexual contact before marriage and for both partners in a committed relationship is to remain faithful. The next safest course is to use latex condoms, but even condoms do not provide 100% protection. Okay,